In 2003, William Morrow, an imprint of HarperCollins, published my book, Brave Men, Gentle Heroes, American Fathers and Sons in World War II and Vietnam. It's an oral history that features the voices of men who served in World War II and their sons who served in Vietnam. These are men from all over the country, from draftees to a graduate of West Point, privates to colonels, city kids and farm boys, people of European, Asian, African, Latino, and Native American ancestry, liberals, conservatives, and in between, Protestants, Catholics, Mormons, and Jews. In other words, I didn't want this book to contain only people who looked and thought like John Wayne. What a privilege it was to speak to these men, nearly all of them combat veterans, to hear their stories, to learn from them. People who have taken part in combat often go decades without talking about it. Some of these men were telling me things they'd never told anyone, thoughts and images and experiences they'd held inside themselves for as long as almost 6 decades. They trusted me with the stories of their lives. In any project we do at Gravitas History, we're asking people to trust us with their stories. I think these veterans trusted me because I was interested in what they had to say. After all, I traveled in some cases across the country to listen to them. But I also made clear to them that I wanted to hear the stories from their point of view. I wanted to hear what was going through their minds as they faced the stress of combat. This is not a book about grand strategy and generals and massive troop movements. It's about ordinary individuals placed in extraordinary circumstances. I tried to communicate to these men my interest in hearing what they did and how they felt, before, during, and after their time at war. Empathy, I learned from doing this book, is essential to conducting a successful oral history interview. Brave Men and A Complicated Man, my biography of President Clinton, were both oral histories and both fascinating to write, but they were different. For A Complicated Man, I talked to numerous high-powered public figures, government officials, journalists, political consultants, generals, people accustomed to giving interviews. The war veterans who tell their stories in Brave Men were all private citizens with jobs outside the public eye. In addition, my interview subjects for A Complicated Man were talking about someone else, Bill Clinton. Those speaking to me for Brave Men were talking about themselves and their deepest feelings. So while ethics demand that I produce a fair and factually accurate biography of President Clinton, especially as I was writing it for Yale University Press, my ethical obligation was, I think, even greater in doing Brave Men. I owed something to these men who had risked their lives on behalf of their country. The book I wrote needed to be faithful to their courage and their sacrifice, as well as, for some of them, their anger and disillusionment. I like to think that Brave Men, Gentle Heroes is one of the best books available if one wants to understand the mind of the modern American warrior.